I was standing in front of my bedroom mirror, holding up my favorite black dress against my body, excitement bubbling in my chest. Tonight was supposed to be special. Marcus and I had planned this dinner at Romano's Italian restaurant for over a week, and I had been looking forward to our romantic evening together. After 8 months of dating, these moments still felt magical to me. I carefully applied my mascara, thinking about how his eyes would light up when he saw me. But then my phone buzzed with a text that would change everything. Marcus was canceling our plans, saying he had an emergency family meeting and needed to meet his parents alone. Something about his message felt off, though I could not quite put my finger on what it was. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so you never miss these real-life stories. Trust me when I say what I discovered that night will absolutely shock you to your core. The disappointment hit me like a cold wave. I sat down on my bed, still holding the dress, trying to process what had just happened. 8 months. That was how long Marcus and I had been together, and in all that time, he had never once introduced me to his parents. We had met at the downtown gym where I went every Tuesday and Thursday evening. He was this incredibly charming guy, 6 feet tall, with the kind of smile that could light up a room. He worked at a marketing startup and always seemed to know exactly what to say to make me laugh. I remember our first date so clearly. We went to this little coffee shop on 5th Street, and he spent 2 hours just listening to me talk about my job at the advertising agency. He seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say, asking thoughtful questions about my projects and my dreams. That night, I felt like I had found someone who truly saw me. The next few weeks were like something out of a romantic movie. He would surprise me with little notes, bring me my favorite vanilla latte on rough mornings, and text me good morning and good night every single day. But lately, things had started feeling different. Over the past month, I had noticed Marcus becoming more secretive with his phone. He would flip it face down whenever I was around, and I caught him stepping outside to take calls more than once. When I asked about it, he always had some explanation about work stress or family drama. I wanted to believe him because I loved him, but something in my gut kept telling me to pay attention to these small changes. There was also the money situation that had been weighing on my mind. Marcus had told me early in our relationship that he was struggling with student loan payments and barely making ends meet at his startup job. As someone who had been fortunate enough to land a good position at my agency, I did not mind helping out here and there. It started small with me picking up dinner tabs, but gradually I found myself paying for more and more things. His car insurance, new clothes for work, even his phone bill when he said his payment was late. Just last month, I had bought him an Apple Watch worth $400 because he mentioned needing something to track his workouts. The week before that, it was a Nike jacket for $250. And before that, those expensive sneakers he had been eyeing for $300. Looking back now, I realized I had probably spent over $2,000 on him in just the past few months, but I justified it by telling myself that couples help each other out. The thing that really started bothering me was how he never seemed to have plans to pay me back. Whenever I mentioned money, he would get this hurt look in his eyes and say something about how much pressure he was under. Then he would kiss me softly and promise that things would get better soon, and I would melt and forget all about my concerns. Tonight's cancellation felt like the final piece of a puzzle I did not want to solve. As I sat there in my black dress, I remembered something he had mentioned a few weeks ago about his ex-girlfriend. Her name was Stella, and he had said they dated for 2 years before breaking up about a year ago. He claimed it ended badly and that he never wanted to see her again. But the way his voice changed when he talked about her, the way he quickly changed the subject afterward, made me wonder if there was more to that story. I looked at myself in the mirror and made a decision that would change everything. Instead of spending the evening feeling sorry for myself while watching Netflix, I was going to drive to Romano's and see what this mysterious family meeting was really about. I changed out of my dress and into a gray hoodie, and jeans grabbed my sunglasses even though it was evening and headed for my car. The 25-minute drive to the restaurant felt like the longest journey of my life. Romano's was exactly as I had imagined it would be. Warm yellow lighting spilled out onto the sidewalk, and through the large windows I could see couples sharing intimate dinners at candlelit tables. The smell of garlic and oregano filled the air, and soft jazz music created the perfect romantic atmosphere. This was supposed to be our night, our table, our romantic dinner. Instead, I was sitting alone at a corner table trying to blend into the shadows while my heart hammered in my chest. I had arrived at 7:30 and managed to get a table in the back corner where I could observe the main dining area without being easily spotted. The hostess, a young woman with kind eyes, had been happy to accommodate my request for a quiet spot. I ordered an appetizer just to avoid suspicion and spent the next 15 minutes checking my phone and scanning every face that walked through the door. At exactly 8 o'clock, Marcus walked in, and my breath caught in my throat. But he was not alone. Walking beside him was a stunning blonde woman about 5 feet 6 inches tall, wearing an elegant red dress that hugged her figure perfectly. Even from across the room, I could see that she carried herself with confidence, her long hair falling in perfect waves over her shoulders. There was something familiar about her, and then it hit me like a truck. This was Stella, his ex-girlfriend. I recognized her from the photos I had accidentally seen on his Instagram months ago, back when we first started dating, and I was curious about his past. My hands started trembling as I watched them being seated at a table right in my line of sight. Marcus pulled out her chair for her, something he had not done for me in months. The intimate way he touched her shoulder, the way she smiled up at him, it was clear that whatever was happening between them, it was not just a casual encounter. But then, things got even worse. About 10 minutes after they were seated, an older couple approached their table. The man was around 60, wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit with silver hair and a commanding presence. The woman beside him looked to be in her mid-50s, wearing a navy blue cardigan over a cream-colored blouse with short brown hair and a warm smile that lit up her entire face. These had to be Marcus's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. I watched in growing horror as Marcus stood up to greet them, giving his mother a tight hug and shaking his father's hand firmly. Then he turned to Stella, placed his hand on the small of her back, and said in a voice that carried just enough for me to hear, "Mom, Dad, I want you to meet Stella again. She is the love of my life, and we are back together." The words hit me like physical blows. I gripped my water glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. Mrs. Thompson's face broke into a huge smile as she reached out to embrace Stella warmly. Mr. Thompson nodded approvingly and clasped Stella's hand in both of his. The four of them settled into conversation, and I could catch fragments of what they were saying from my hidden corner. They were discussing wedding plans. Stella was showing Mrs. Thompson something on her phone, probably pictures of venues or dresses. Mr. Thompson was talking about his connections in the catering business. Marcus was sitting there with his arm around Stella's shoulders, looking completely at ease, as if this was exactly where he belonged. Then Mrs. Thompson asked the question that made my blood run cold. "But, Marcus, honey, what about that girl you have been seeing, Tanya? Was it—" She had gotten my name wrong, but I knew exactly who she was referring to. Marcus actually laughed. It was a sound I had heard 1,000 times before, usually when he was telling me some funny story about his day. But now it was directed at me at my expense, and it sounded cruel and cold. "That pathetic girl," he said loud enough for several nearby tables to hear. "She is just my walking ATM. I have been using her for months while I worked on getting Stella back." I thought I might be sick right there at the table. But he was not done. He leaned back in his chair, looking incredibly pleased with himself, and continued, "She pays for everything. My car insurance, my clothes, even my phone bill. Just last month, she bought me this watch." He held up his wrist to show off the Apple Watch I had given him, the one I had saved up for, because I thought it would make him happy. "She thinks I am broke from student loans, so she always offers to pay for things. I just act grateful, and she melts every time." Stella giggled, actually giggled at this revelation. "You are terrible," she said, but she was smiling as she said it, clearly finding his deception amusing rather than appalling. Mr. Thompson chuckled and raised his wine glass. "You are smart, son. Why work when some desperate girl will pay for everything?" The entire table erupted in laughter, as if my humiliation was the funniest thing they had ever heard. I sat there in my corner, my whole body shaking with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. 8 months of my life. 8 months of believing his lies, of thinking I was building something real with someone who cared about me. 8 months of paying for his lifestyle while he laughed about it behind my back. The protein powder in my kitchen cabinet, the game console in my living room, the expensive cologne in my bathroom that I had bought him for his birthday. All of it was just evidence of how thoroughly he had played me. Marcus continued his story, clearly enjoying having an audience. "The best part is how easy it was. I would mention being stressed about money, and she would immediately offer to help. When I told her my car insurance was due, and I did not have the money, she offered to pay it that same day. $180 a month, and she has been covering it for the past 4 months. I did quick math in my head and realized I had been paying over $700 just for his car insurance, not including all the other things. The MacBook Pro I bought him when he said his computer crashed right before an important work presentation. The AirPods Pro because he mentioned wanting to upgrade his headphones. The expensive cologne set because I wanted him to have something special. When I added it all up, I had probably spent close to $3,000 on him over the course of our relationship. Mrs. Thompson was shaking her head in amazement. "I have to admit, I was worried when you said you were dating someone new, but you clearly have everything under control." "Trust me, Mom," Marcus replied, taking Stella's hand in his. "I am dumping Tanya next week, right after Stella moves back in with me. I already have it all planned out. I will tell her I need space to figure out my life, make it sound like it is about me and not her. She will probably cry and try to convince me to work things out, but I will be firm. Then Stella and I can finally be together properly." Stella squeezed his hand and looked into his eyes with what I had thought was the expression she reserved just for me. "I cannot wait to start our life together for real this time. No more hiding, no more pretending." I realized I had been holding my breath for the past several minutes. The rational part of my brain was telling me to get up and leave before I did something I would regret. But another part of me, the part that had been used and manipulated and lied to for 8 months, wanted to walk over to that table and tell them exactly what I thought of their little plan. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I smiled, not because I was happy, but because suddenly everything made perfect sense. All the times he had made me feel like I was being too demanding when I asked about our future together. All the times he had deflected when I brought up meeting his family. All the times he had made me feel guilty for wanting more commitment from our relationship. It had never been about me not being good enough or him not being ready. It had been about him already having someone else, someone he was planning to be with all along. I quietly paid for my appetizer, left a generous tip for the server who had done nothing wrong, and walked out of Romano's with my head held high. The 25-minute drive home was a blur of emotions, but by the time I pulled into my apartment complex, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The moment I unlocked my apartment door, I felt like I was seeing everything with new eyes. Marcus's things were everywhere. His leather jacket hanging on the back of my chair, the one I had bought him for $250. His protein powder containers lined up on my kitchen counter. his expensive sneakers by the front door, the ones I had surprised him with last month, his toiletries taking up half of my bathroom counter space. For 8 months, I had slowly been making room for him in my life, in my home, in my heart. I had rearranged my furniture to make space for his gaming console, reorganized my closet to fit his clothes, changed my streaming service subscriptions to include the shows he wanted to watch. I had molded my entire life around making him comfortable. And now I realized he had never done the same for me. He had never made room for me in his life because I was never meant to be a permanent part of it. I started in the bedroom, pulling his clothes out of my dresser drawers and closet. There were so many things I had forgotten about. The cashmere sweater I bought him for Christmas. The designer jeans he said he needed for a work event. The silk ties I thought made him look professional. As I folded each item and placed it in garbage bags, I felt a strange sense of relief washing over me. Next came the living room, where his gaming console sat connected to my television. I carefully unplugged everything, coiling the cords neatly and placing the entire setup in a box. The protein powder went next, along with the expensive blender I had bought specifically so he could make his workout shakes at my place. In the bathroom, I gathered up his cologne, his fancy electric toothbrush, his skincare products that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Each item I packed away was a reminder of how much I had invested in this relationship, both financially and emotionally. The hardest part was deciding what to do with the things I had bought for him. The MacBook Pro sitting on my desk, the AirPods Pro in their charging case, the Apple Watch he was probably still wearing at dinner with his family, and his real girlfriend. These were expensive items that I had purchased with my hard-earned money, thinking I was building a future with someone who loved me. After some consideration, I decided to keep the electronics. I had bought them, I had the receipts, and I was going to need a new laptop soon anyway. But everything else, every piece of clothing, every personal item, every reminder of the lies he had been telling me went into bags and boxes. I called my building's landlord, Mr. Rodriguez, who lived in the apartment downstairs. He was a kind man in his 60s who had always been helpful when I needed anything fixed or had questions about the lease. I explained that I was having a breakup situation and needed to leave some belongings in the lobby temporarily. He was understanding and said I could use the space near the mailboxes for a few hours. By midnight, I had moved everything downstairs. 6 garbage bags full of clothes, 2 boxes of personal items, his gaming console, and various other belongings were neatly arranged in a corner of the lobby. I wrote a simple note on a piece of cardboard, "Your stuff. Do not contact me again." G. Back in my apartment, I went through my phone and computer, changing every password he had ever used. Netflix, Spotify, Amazon, Prime, Hulu, even my grocery store app that gave discounts. For months, I had been sharing all of these services with him, thinking we were building a shared life together. Now I realized I had just been providing free entertainment for someone who was using me. I blocked his number on my phone and removed him from all of my social media accounts: Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, even LinkedIn. I did not want him to have any way to contact me or any window into my life moving forward. Finally, I sat down on my couch and looked around my apartment. For the first time in months, it felt like mine again. No gaming controller on my coffee table, no men's shoes by the door, no protein powder smell in my kitchen. The space felt bigger somehow, like I could finally breathe again. I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe even since we started dating. There was sadness, of course, and anger and hurt. But underneath all of those emotions was something I had not expected: relief. I was relieved that I did not have to pretend anymore that his secretive behavior was normal. Relieved that I did not have to make excuses for why he never wanted to make future plans together. Relieved that I did not have to wonder why I always felt like I was not quite enough for him. As I got ready for bed that night, I caught sight of myself in the bathroom mirror. I looked different somehow. Older maybe, but also stronger. I had discovered the worst possible truth about someone I loved, and I had survived it. More than that, I had taken action to protect myself and my future. For the first time in 8 months, I felt like I was in control of my own life again. The next 2 months passed in a blur of healing and rediscovery. I threw myself into my work at the marketing agency with a renewed focus that surprised even me. Without the constant distraction of wondering what Marcus was really doing or who he was really with, I found that I could concentrate on projects in a way I had not been able to for months. My dedication paid off quickly. 3 weeks after that horrible night at Romano's, my boss Jennifer called me into her office and offered me a promotion to senior account manager. It came with a salary increase of $15,000 per year and the opportunity to lead my own team. The irony was not lost on me that removing Marcus from my life had immediately improved my professional prospects. I started going to the gym regularly again, something I had been neglecting while I was so focused on spending time with Marcus. I signed up for an Italian cooking class on Thursday evenings, partly because I had always wanted to learn, and partly because it felt like reclaiming something that Marcus had taken from me. He had made me feel like I was not cultured enough, not interesting enough, not sophisticated enough. Now I was learning to make real risotto and fresh pasta, and I was good at it. I also started building friendships with my coworkers in a way I had not bothered to do when all my free time was devoted to Marcus. Sarah from the creative department and I began having lunch together twice a week. Lisa from accounts receivable and I discovered we both loved hiking and started planning weekend trips to nearby state parks. For the first time since college, I felt like I was building a real social circle instead of just waiting around for my boyfriend to be available. The most surprising change was in my living space. Without Marcus's belongings cluttering up my apartment, I realized how much I had compromised my own style and preferences to accommodate his. I bought new throw pillows in colors I loved, hung artwork that spoke to me, and rearranged my furniture to create a reading nook by the window. My apartment became a reflection of who I was not, who I thought he wanted me to be. I had not heard from Marcus at all during those 2 months, which confirmed what I already knew about his character. A decent person would have tried to apologize, tried to explain, tried to make some kind of amends for the hurt they had caused. But Marcus was not a decent person, and his silence told me that he had simply moved on to the next phase of his plan without giving me another thought. On a rainy Tuesday night in November, I was coming home from my company's quarterly celebration dinner. We had exceeded our targets for the third quarter in a row, and the whole team had gone out to celebrate at this amazing steakhouse downtown. I had worn my favorite navy blue dress, the one that made me feel confident and professional, and I was still glowing from the recognition I had received for my work on our biggest client's campaign. It was almost 2 in the morning when I pulled into my apartment complex's parking lot. The rain was coming down steadily, and I was looking forward to getting inside, making a cup of tea, and reflecting on how much my life had improved over the past 2 months. I was juggling my purse, my umbrella, and my leftover dinner as I approached the front entrance to my building. That was when I saw him. Marcus was sitting on the concrete steps outside the main entrance, completely soaked from the rain. His hair was plastered to his head, his clothes were drenched, and he was shivering visibly in the cold November air. He looked up when he heard my footsteps, and I saw that his eyes were red and swollen, either from crying or from the rain, or probably both. "Gabriella," he said, standing up quickly when he saw me. "I have been waiting for you. We need to talk." I stopped about 10 feet away from him, keeping my distance. Up close, I could see that he looked terrible. He had lost weight. His skin looked pale and unhealthy, and there were dark circles under his eyes. This was not the confident, charming man who had swept me off my feet at the gym 8 months ago. This was someone who looked desperate and defeated. "There is nothing to talk about," I said calmly. "I heard everything I needed to hear that night at Romano's." His face went white, and for a moment, he seemed at a loss for words. Then the excuses started flowing, just like I knew they would. Gabriella, you do not understand. I was just trying to impress my parents. Stella and I, we are not really back together. I was lying to them because they never approved of her before, and I wanted them to think I had my life figured out. I almost laughed at how pathetic his explanation was. Even now, caught red-handed in his deception, he was still trying to manipulate me with more lies. Marcus, I said, I heard you call me a pathetic walking ATM. I heard you laugh about using me for months. I heard you planned to dump me so you could move in with Stella. Which part of that was for your parents' benefit? He tried a different approach, stepping closer to me with his hands outstretched in a pleading gesture. Okay, you are right. I screwed up badly. But Stella dumped me, Gabriella. 2 weeks after that dinner, she found out I did not actually have money like I had told her. She realized I had been lying about having a successful business, and she left me. I lost my job because I was missing too much work trying to win her back. I had to move back in with my parents. I have nothing now. And why exactly do you think that is my problem? I asked. The rain continued to fall around us, and I realized that this conversation was probably long overdue. For 2 months, I had been moving on with my life without any closure, without any real understanding of whether he felt any remorse for what he had done. Now I could see that he did not. Even his apology was really just another attempt to use me to get me to feel sorry for him and take him back so he could have a place to stay and someone to pay his bills. I love you, Gabriella, he said, and I could hear the desperation in his voice. I know I made mistakes, but what we had was real. You have to believe that. I looked at him standing there in the rain, shivering and pathetic, and I felt something I had not expected to feel. I felt sorry for him. Not sorry enough to take him back, not sorry enough to forgive him, but sorry that he was the kind of person who could only find value in himself by using other people. Sorry that he had never learned how to build something real with someone who cared about him. Marcus, I said gently, I hope you learned something from this experience. I hope you figure out how to be honest with people and how to build relationships that are not based on deception and manipulation. But I am not going to be part of that learning process for you. I walked past him toward my building's entrance, and he called after me one more time. Gabriella, please. I have nowhere else to go. I turned back to look at him one final time. You should have thought about that before you decided to use someone who genuinely cared about you. As I unlocked the door to my building, I heard him say quietly, I am sorry. I really am sorry. I paused for a moment, considering whether to respond. Finally, I said, I believe you are sorry, Marcus. But you are sorry that you got caught and that your plan did not work out. You are not sorry that you hurt me. And that is the difference between someone who makes mistakes and someone who just is not a good person. I went inside and locked the door behind me, leaving him sitting in the rain. As I rode the elevator up to my apartment, I realized that I felt completely at peace with my decision. I had handled the situation with dignity and strength, and I had not allowed his desperation to manipulate me into making a choice that would hurt my future. That night, as I finally settled into bed with my cup of tea, I thought about the journey I had been on over the past 2 months. I had discovered the worst thing I could imagine about someone I loved, and it had nearly broken me. But instead of staying broken, I had rebuilt myself into someone stronger, more independent, and more confident than I had ever been before. I realized that Marcus's betrayal had actually been a gift, though it had not felt like one at the time. It had freed me from a relationship that was never going to lead anywhere good. It had shown me that I was capable of taking care of myself and making tough decisions when I needed to. It had taught me to trust my instincts and to pay attention when someone's actions do not match their words. Most importantly, it had shown me what I deserved from a relationship. I deserved honesty, respect, commitment, and genuine love. I deserved someone who would be proud to introduce me to their family, who would include me in their future plans, who would never dream of using me or taking advantage of my generosity. Marcus had never been capable of giving me those things, and staying with him would have meant settling for far less than I was worth. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I thought about something my grandmother used to tell me when I was little and dealing with friendship drama at school. She would say, "Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. You just have to be brave enough to walk away when you know you deserve better." At the time, I thought she was just trying to make me feel better about whatever petty disagreement I was having with my classmates. Now I understood that she was giving me wisdom that would serve me for the rest of my life. Marcus, using me and lying to me, was definitely one of the worst things that had ever happened to me. But walking away from him and rebuilding my life had led to some of the best changes I had ever experienced. I got promoted at work because I was no longer distracted by trying to figure out what was wrong in my relationship. I made new friends because I was no longer spending all my free time waiting around for someone who did not prioritize me. I discovered new interests and hobbies because I was no longer trying to mold myself into what I thought someone else wanted me to be. I learned to trust my own judgment because I had survived making a hard decision and coming out stronger on the other side. 6 months later, I would meet David at my Italian cooking class. He would be nothing like Marcus. He would be honest about his feelings from day one, eager to introduce me to his friends and family, and genuinely interested in building a future together. When I told him the story of what had happened with Marcus, he would be horrified that anyone could treat me that way. He would make it clear through his actions, not just his words, that he valued me and respected me and would never dream of using me. But even if I had never met David, even if I had stayed single for years after Marcus, I would still consider walking away from that relationship one of the best decisions I ever made. Because I learned that being alone and happy is infinitely better than being with someone who makes you doubt your worth. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where you felt like you were giving more than you were getting? Have you ever ignored red flags because you wanted to believe someone loved you the way you loved them? Let me know in the comments below what signs you think everyone should watch out for. In relationships, do not forget to like this video. If my story resonated with you, subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and share this with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better than being someone's walking ATM. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone who does not value the amazing person you are. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video.